Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing. My name is Susan Ryan, and I am the Senior Director for the Greenhouse Project. I am super excited about today's topic, but before we go there, I want to just do some quick housekeeping to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded, and you will be receiving a link with the presentation probably within the next day of today's broadcast. You're in listen-only mode, which means that if you want to ask a question, you can use the chat feature in the box on the side of your screen. That's on the right-hand side of your screen. The other thing that I wanted to do is to just not let this opportunity go by without extending deep appreciation and gratitude for all of our care teams and care partners that are out there on the front lines working tirelessly day in and day out to support, love, courageously care for our elders. We owe you a debt of gratitude. You are heroes, and I just want to thank you from the depths of the bottom of my heart. And I know Anne and Mike, who will be doing the presentation today, I know they would extend the same incredibly good wishes, sincere appreciation, and we wish you our deepest thoughts, prayers for continued safety and strength and even peace amid this crisis. So let me tell you a little bit about our speakers and about today's topic. Anne Ellett and I met years ago. It was at an assisted living conference, and I heard Anne when she was, at the time, she was the clinical VP for health services for Silverado Senior Living. And I loved her approach to really bringing dignified memory care to those folks that were living in their long-term care environments. I learned so much from Anne and brought so much back to the community in which I was working at the time. Years later, after she had left Silverado Senior Living, she was doing her own consulting business, Memory Care Support, which she's the founder of, and she continues to do that. We reconnected, and it was at that time that I connected with a good friend, but also a nurse practitioner, a certified dementia care practitioner, and somebody who really shares so much of my goals, our goals at the Greenhouse Project team. And so it was in 2016, 2017 that we invited Anne to kind of join us and to tap into her expertise as a consultant, a dementia care consultant. She did a review of our dementia, or of all of our curriculum, to really determine what we had that was best practice and where we needed to go. And the rest is history, as they say. She developed our best life approach to memory care. She joined us as a full-time staff member in 2019 and really worked with us to take things forward. And I can't tell you how delighted I am and to have you here. And Mike, I had you there for a minute on your webcam, but just wanted to also say a big thank you to Mike for joining us. And Mike is going to join Anne later on in the presentation, but Mike is the quintessential advocate. He is somebody that was given a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's in 2013, I believe it was. And then later on, it was determined that it was a dementia, the Lewy body type. And I have learned volumes from Mike. Mike was a part of some filming we did for a Best Life video that is under production right now. He has been an expert on some of our calls that we are doing with a cohort of greenhouse adopters. His expertise is invaluable to really helping us to really hear the voice of that person that is living the experience. So Mike, my gratitude to you for being a part of today's call. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne and ask her to walk us through the slides. And at the end of today's presentation, there will be time for Q&A. So please utilize the chat section of your of the box over there to send us your questions. I think this is a provocative, a wonderful topic for us to talk about. So with that, Anne, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan and Mike, for joining us today. I'll put my slides up here and look forward to talking about this with all of you. Let's see. Can you all see my slides now?
We got them. Yep.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. And like Susan, I just want to say I'm in awe of what everyone on this call, how hard you've all been working to support your residents, your patients during this really challenging and extraordinary time. So thank you who took time in your day to join us today. So as Susan said, I have my own consulting company related to supporting people living with dementia to have the best life. And it was such a pleasure to work with the Greenhouse Homes and develop in tandem with their great team the best life approach that they have taken out to their greenhouse homes and is now available throughout their homes across the country, and it's available to other assisted livings and nursing homes across the country. So I think a good question is, why are we even bothering to talk about real versus fake? Why is this important to talk about that subject today? So I always refer it back to what are the kinds of things that we hear, that we think about, that other people say when we start talking about someone who is living with dementia. And this is just, I'm sure, typical of what many of you hear. Some of you might even be thinking these things. They don't know the difference. It doesn't really matter. They can't do it anyway. They're okay over there in their wheelchair. They can't appreciate new experiences, or they're unable. They're unable. So quickly we are given that kind of impression back when someone is associated with the diagnosis of dementia. And the healthcare professionals, we've all been trained this way. We've been trained to look at losses and inabilities. But, you know, I'd love to have Mike speak to this in a while, and the stigma that often comes with that diagnosis. Excuse me. And I don't know about you, but if any of you on this webinar today have had this experience, but I can be out at a social gathering and, you know, in light conversation, someone says, well, what do you do? And when I explain that I'm a nurse practitioner who works to support people living with dementia, often before the end of the evening, someone has come up to me and confidentially shared that they have been recently diagnosed with dementia, but they don't want anyone to know. So why is that? Is it because of the way we perceive, meaning all of us on this webinar today, is it because of the way we perceive someone when we hear the word dementia? We begin to associate it with inabilities. It doesn't matter, they're incapable. And I know that that all of us as professionals are embracing the idea that we want to give a person living with dementia the very best opportunities, the best experiences. So in this really extraordinary time that we're all experiencing right now, when we do look back, we don't want to say we've regressed in our standards. We don't want to say that we've gone back, reverted back to the time of undignified practices, to flipping back in time when we didn't think about the quality of their day or individual needs and preferences. Even in this extraordinary time, we want to keep our eye on that goal, that we want to offer dignity, we want to offer new experiences. So just quickly, if you're not familiar with the Best Life approach, There are 4 core principles. One is the power of normal. And I'm not thinking of our new normal today in this time of separation and wearing masks, but I want to recognize that we strive to create a normal environment, one that isn't clinical, an environment that integrates normal and regular experiences, an environment that is individual-centered, person-centered. We also, we want to remember and pay attention that we focus on retained abilities. As I mentioned, that stigma where immediately our mind can go to, oh, this person is living with dementia, therefore they must not be able to. Instead, why don't we flip that? And why don't we say, Anne is living with dementia and she's still a great gardener, or Anne's living with dementia, or she still enjoys playing cards, or she loves to hear live music. Why don't we focus on strengths and abilities? The dignity of risk is another core principle. And people living with dementia, just like ourselves, anyone else, enjoy new experiences. We can't bubble wrap them, for example, to keep them from falling down. We've tried awful things. There's a history of tying people in bed, tying people in their chairs, certainly over medicating them, thinking that this is going to keep them quote unquote safe. Of course, it doesn't keep them safe. We can never guarantee. And by taking away that really human need to continue to interact and explore and have new experiences, we are dehumanizing them. And advocacy. Everyone on this call has to be an advocate for people living with dementia. Put yourself in their place. Don't dismiss them. Advocate for that experience, that intervention that can make a difference in their day. If they can't articulate it themselves, are you listening to them in other ways, to learning what their preferences and their needs are and advocating for that? So I love this statement by Kate Swaffer. She's living with dementia in Australia. She's another great advocate. And her statement goes along with the concept of the stigma attached to the diagnosis of dementia, that immediately our mind goes to losses and inabilities. As Kate says, it's wrong to highlight the losses. And as you saw in the core principles of best life, one of them is to focus on retained abilities. So, but she really calls this out because especially the medical world, the medical profession, the clinical settings, often they're all about documenting the losses and inabilities with very little thought on what their skills and retained talents are. For those of you that aren't familiar with Kate, just as an aside, if you have an extra few minutes, you can just Google her. There's a lot of some really nice videos on YouTube with her where she's just a wonderful advocate and so articulate about how we perceive people who are living with dementia. So in the Best Life approach, we have some guidelines for meaningful engagements. And one, create a normalized environment. When you think of everything that often a care facility takes away from people, we take away so many choices, so many decisions, so much initiative, personal initiative, so much creativity sometimes because things are scheduled and everything is looked at from the point of risk management. So instead, if we look at what can we do to bring normality back, why do we have to take so many things away? Why can't we provide more choice and purpose? The second guideline, one that I really like, is enhance the image of a person living with dementia. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on in this presentation. But why do we give objects or create environments that highlight their losses? Why can't we develop environments and experiences that enhance the strengths and enhance their image? And why is image important? Because I think all of us, it's our nature. I think you look at someone and you often form a very quick impression, that first impression. And if we see someone who's not well groomed, or they're sitting in the corner with a children's toy, it's easy to immediately go to in your mind, oh, this person must be unable. This person has some losses. Instead, if we surround them with experiences and objects that enhance their image, enhance that they're full adults, it helps us to remember to honor them in that way. And then we also have to recognize that people living with dementia want to have new experiences, which might involve some risk. Again, going back to our really awful practices of encouraging people to sit in chairs all day. Don't get up, that's okay. Really what we've done is, one, we can't guarantee their safety by having them in the wheelchair all day, but we've also taken away a lot of their abilities and choices by encouraging them to stay immobile and not be active. So I like to talk about age-appropriate engagements and surround them with objects that enhance their image. So, for example, if you look at these photos, there's absolutely nothing in these photos that would identify that this is a person who has losses or inabilities. They're all involved with age-appropriate adult-type activities, having real experiences. And there's nothing there that you'd look at that and say, I wonder if there's something unusual, or that person has some inabilities, or why isn't that person interacting in the way that we would expect? There's nothing here that would highlight any losses. But if we see them and treat them with children, like children, if we surround them with objects that are not age appropriate, that are not real, again, that first impression, we would look at that adult and go, this is not something typical. There's something unusual going on here. Why is this person sitting with children's toys? What is there unusual about that? And this is a picture that I do see in some nursing homes and assisted living. And I know that it comes from a desire to create comfort, to engage a person. But when you pull a wagon full of dolls down a hallway that is filled with adults and you start passing out dolls, I'm saying that's not a normal experience. That's not an experience, that's not an image that enhances their image. That's not a usual thing. Is this going to identify that person as, well, I guess they couldn't relate or be near a real child or a real infant? There's something unusual about that. So I love this, and I'm going to just play you a quick video here. But contrasting pretend experiences versus real experiences, interacting with a real child, having intergenerational programs, these are normal experiences. They highlight their retained abilities. They're going to provide an opportunity for real relationships and certainly enhance the image of that person's abilities and skills. So this beautiful lady in this photo, her name is Jan, and she lived in one of the greenhouse homes in Arkansas. And she's actually the mother of one of the staff members there. And staff perceived her as quite far along in the process with dementia, and she didn't interact a lot with other people. But look what happened when a nurse brought in her new infant. Nobody can take you. I love you. So I just want to share that I found this so profound. And when the staff there at this greenhouse home were talking about Jan holding and rocking and singing to this infant in such a perfect and appropriate and loving way. And when you look at the en face vision of her looking at that infant's face, how meaningful that is and how connected she is to this child, and obviously how comfortable the infant is with her. So you're not going to get that type of experience handing someone a doll. And as I said, I know that this is done from the motivation of wanting to create comfort, wanting to engage a person. But I always like to challenge us to ask, why not? Or what would it take? And so when you think of handing someone a doll and what the image that gives of that person and how different that experience is versus connecting with a real child, a real infant, it's quite amazing. And the staff, they said they were just so shocked, really, when Jan started singing and rocking, that they had no idea that she would connect this way. So what a wonderful thing to have given her that opportunity versus handing her a doll. So what would it take for all of you on this call to have more intergenerational interactions with real infants, real children? One of the places I worked encouraged staff to bring their children to work, and they were integrated into the environment in really a seamless way. Now, I know that probably some of you on this webinar are going, wait, we could never do that. That would have too much risk. That would be chaos. We can't do that. And you're right. You have to be thoughtful about it. That's certainly another subject that we could talk more about, because it really can be done in such a natural and wonderful way, and it adds so much to the environment and getting that normalcy of interflow and interactions between different generations. So again, here's a comparison between many, I don't know about nursing homes, but many assisted livings now. The new design that you're seeing going up in a lot of places is to create a hallway that has fake storefronts. And again, I know it comes from a desire to give a good quality of experience to the person living there. But it doesn't, I've been in these places, I've spent quite a bit of time with them. And again, a person might be living with dementia, but that doesn't mean they're not intelligent and they don't have memory of real experiences. And it doesn't take them very long to figure out that this is just like a painting on the wall. It really has no meaning to them. Versus, here's the experience of someone who is able to still smell and touch and create and have a real experience. So again, asking all of us on the call, what would it take to be able to let the people that you are supporting have real experiences like this lady? So this is, I just want to share, this is a favorite story from our friend, Dr. Al Power. And if you're not familiar with him, again, I encourage you to look him up. He's written some very powerful books about dementia and about how we perceive people who are living with dementia. But one of his stories that really struck me was about a gentleman who lived in, I think it was an assisted living. And he was one of these residents that was always at the door trying to get out. And they could not redirect him. He was very adamant that he wanted to go out. He wanted to go out. And staff were putting their heads together. What could they do for him? How could they make this type of action stop? They were worried that he was going to, be unsafe and get out. And they were considering whether they needed to add medications for him or what else they could do to make him calm down and not want to go out all the time. Well, one of the people who worked there, through conversation with the family, learned that he had worked or owned a farm for many years. And his pattern every morning was to go out and check on his cows. So not that hard to go from that information to saying, well, why don't we let him go out? Because guess what? On the other side of the yard from the assisted living was a pasture with cows in it. And he was wanting to go out and check on the cows. That's what was meaningful to him. It was a real experience. So the staff got together and they let him go out. And every morning he would go out, spend a few minutes out checking on the cows, leaning over the fence, and then he would come back in and be peaceful and content to stay inside the rest of the day. So I love that story because I feel very, very sure that if they had tried to show him a picture of a cow, or maybe given him a stuffed cow, a stuffed toy, it would not have been meaningful to him. So again, that knowing that person experiences, his history, what was meaningful to them, and then being able to enable that, how great is that? So I've done other webinars just really focused on pets, and we don't have time today to delve deeply into that again, but I do really want to talk about the value of pets, because almost everywhere I go, when I ask about meaningful engagements and what kind of things they're doing, almost always they proudly talk about their pet therapy program and how much the people who live there enjoy the interactions with the animals. And so, in my mind, I'm going, well, you just told me how meaningful this was. Why don't we have a dog that lives there? And again, I'm pretty sure a lot of you on the call right now are going, oh no, wait, we can't do that. No, we couldn't have a dog that lives here. And as I said, I can't go into real depth with that. That's a different webinar that just really focuses on some of that. But we can talk a little bit about the value. And if you're interested in learning more about how to introduce animals that actually live with you, we can maybe send you the information on the previous webinar. But again, you look at this photo and this is a beautiful photo, and there is absolutely nothing in here that highlights that this woman has any losses or inabilities. This just looks like could be my neighbor down the street, I mean, there is nothing in here that speaks to that this woman is not capable of full experiences. So we know that some of the values of real animals, just like that man going out and looking at his cows, you can have a real relationship. I mean, many people, there's lots of books and articles written about the use of pets for depression, the use of pets for therapy, how meaningful it is, that those relationships. It adds purpose. Again, it focuses on their retained abilities. It's certainly adult appropriate. There's nothing unusual about seeing someone scratch or brush a dog or a cat versus if they were to do that to a stuffed animal, you'd go, well, why doesn't that person recognize that's not a real animal? It certainly enhances their image when it shows that they can have that type of relationship, and it helps combat the stigma of dementia. Also, I'm a nurse, so I'm always looking for what other benefits can we get, and such nice research verifying that the benefits of pet ownership, people who own pets, they have less stress, even their cholesterol is lower, which is pretty awesome. Decrease obesity, probably because they're more mobile, increases socialization, blood pressure benefits of owning pets. So again, I'm not saying having a pet in your assisted living or nursing home is going to create miracles, but it's certainly going to go a long ways towards creating normalcy, a normal environment, taking the emphasis away from that clinical experience. So just a quick story here of this is Miles, the dog, and again, a nurse had her dog had a litter of puppies. She couldn't get rid of all of them, so she started bringing one little puppy to work with her, and just tried it out. And again, I don't usually recommend puppies move in to a community with older folks because they can run around and it can be kind of risky. But the people who lived in this greenhouse home just fell in love with Miles. He was a little puppy. He did create some problems. The residents said, "We don't care. We are keeping him. You are not getting rid of our dog." And he has been so integrated into the environment there. I mean, what is more beautiful than seeing this man just relax like he would on his own living room in his own house and play with the dog? So there's lots of wonderful stories about the meaning of what Miles has brought to the residents there. This is not the same. This is not the same. Somebody can hold a robotic or a stuffed pet. You're not getting that connection. You're not getting that relationship. So Mike, I don't know, would this be a time if you would like to share any of your thoughts about real experiences versus pretend experiences?
Sure. First of all, I love listening to Ann talk. There's so many tidbits and so many different things that she said that I was like, ooh, I want to say something about that. Ooh, I want to say something about that.
Now's your chance.
And I didn't write them down, but I'll try to cover what I remember. The first thing I want to start off with is that there isn't a one size fits all. And the thing about real versus fake, for me, is that it's obviously personal to me. And I'll use the example of my mom. My mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's a little over a year ago, and she's always loved dolls, always collected them, had them on her bed, everything. And she's still living at home, thank goodness. But unfortunately, it's getting closer to the time where she's probably going to have to move into some type of assisted care. And the difference would be if someone were to bring her a doll when she was in assisted care, is how is it being approached to her? Is someone bringing her a doll and saying, "Oh, look at this beautiful baby"? To me, that's an insult, to be frank. It's demeaning in too many ways that I can even count. But if they said, oh, look at this doll, remember the dolls are used to collect? So obviously there's a huge difference in how it's being presented to the individual. Personally, my wife Cheryl knows that I would never ever want anything other than the real thing for me. And I'm fortunate right now that I've been able to express that. But my concern is for people who cannot verbally express that for themselves. So are these types of items just given to people to pacify them or to think that they're, that they're going to help them? And my thought to that is, are you really doing that for the person, or are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it because you think it's, you're doing something good for that person, it's making you feel good, instead of what it's actually doing for the individual that you're giving the item to? You touched on a few things, and about what people perceive, people living with dementia, and I'll just try to use another quick couple of examples. I was on a call just a little bit earlier today that I led, and it was just about having fun. It was just a whole hour of discussion of what are you doing to have fun right now. And one lady who has dementia talked about how she had a stroke not long ago, and she loves to paint. And unfortunately, it affected her dominant arm, so she's learning to paint with the other arm. But then she said something that really struck me. She said, "Oh yeah, and I love to do yoga." And I said, "Well, stop. Yoga? You do yoga? But you had a stroke." And she said, "Yeah, but it doesn't stop me." And I said that on purpose, because my point was, people would automatically assume because she had a stroke and she was limited physically that she shouldn't be doing yoga, that it could be, it's not something she can do anymore. It's just automatically assumed that she wouldn't be able to do it. And if you all had a chance to see this individual, you would know immediately that nothing's going to stop her. And that's what I loved about it. She's like, no, I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm still going to do the things I enjoy doing. So the point I'm trying to make is that people automatically perceive things or automatically assume things of a person living with dementia, that they're not capable, or oh, you're going to hurt yourself, or, oh, let me do that for you, or so on and so forth. And nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, my brother and sister-in-law are in their mid-50s. They're perfectly fine. Everything's okay. They lost a dog recently, and they're having a hard time trying to find another dog. They want to adopt a dog. I don't see them going to buy a fake one. Get my drift. Okay, they're not, they're going to go look for a real dog. Another example I would use of what people would just automatically assume or perceive of people. My mother-in-law, who I absolutely adore, is in her early 80s. And every time we have a family get-together, a wedding or a party or what have you, they purposely play Wipeout. Now, if you saw my 80-year-old mother-in-law dancing to Wipeout, you'd be like, you've got to be kidding me. But this lady can move, okay? And she gets the whole room jumping. And again, I only bring that up because people just would automatically say, oh, she's 80 years old, let's let her do the waltz, something nice and gentle. No, she wants to do Wipeout. Okay, so let her do Wipeout. I'm doing things, living, having dementia now. Nothing are, that are like seriously harmful, but could be perceived as being harmful. I love to cook, so my wife Cheryl's with me when I cook, and I'll be honest with you, I've left the stove on a few times, and Cheryl's been there to watch me, but she lets me cook. And that picture you showed of real versus fake, of the storefront versus the person cooking, if the time or when the time comes where I have to move into a care home, if anybody ever brought me fake food to play with, like you would give to a child, I can guarantee you it's going to get thrown across the room out of frustration or what have you. Meet the person where they are right now. And the thing that's challenging with dementia, and because I'm learning it every single day, is that changes from time to time, or it could change from day to day. One day you might let me try to make bread and I'm struggling and have a hard time and I might get frustrated and you say, oh, well, Mike can't do that anymore. No, let me try to make bread again the next day, because the next day I may do it and be and have success with it, and enjoy the fact that I was able to still contribute at where I am at that particular time. So just because I'm may not be able to do it that one day doesn't mean that's it, I'm done forever. I can no longer do it ever again. So I think I'll stop there. Let you talk more, Ann. Unless people have questions, but
yeah, Mike, that was wonderful. And I so appreciated the example of the dolls with your mom, because I agree that she sounds like just the person that if you brought the right kind of doll to her, it could help tell her story, because that's who she's been.
that's correct.
Versus giving her a baby doll and acting like it's a baby for her to take care of. That's a different experience.
Yeah. Another example I would use, and this is one of my favorites, is there was a documentary done a year or two ago. It's called Revolutionizing Dementia Care.
Mm-hmm.
It was a PBS documentary done by Jason Mills. And there's a scene in there where they highlight this particular gentleman, and he's not completely nonverbal, but wasn't really talking, wasn't really engaging. And they kind of follow him along, just kind of getting ready during the day. And they had brought in some equestrian therapy horses.
Uh-huh.
They brought the individuals outside. And this particular gentleman walked up to one of the horses, got right up to it, put his face right against the horse's face and just started stroking it and started talking to the horse. And he started calling the horse, not calling the horse by his wife's name, but calling his wife's name, saying, it's okay, I forget his wife's name, everything's going to be all right, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be okay. And it completely caught the staff off guard, because he had lost his wife not long before he had to move into into a care home. And they had no idea that he was still grieving his wife's loss. And because of being able to see the horse and actually touching the horse, it was a real living animal. It wasn't a stuffed animal. He was able to express that to them. So it just opened up a whole new area for this gentleman that they were able to help him with. Again, I don't think he would have got that from a stuffed animal. So it just shows the importance.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and it was very moving. It was very beautiful. If you haven't seen that documentary, definitely recommend it. So just to go on a little bit, here's another just such a wonderful, joyful report of the connections and the relationships that people can form with real animals. And you can hand someone a stuffed cat, but it's not going to have the joy that you see in these ladies' faces and the connection. And this is something that's becoming not widespread, but a little more common, where some of the care places are partnering with other places to foster animals. And what a great way to have purpose and meaning and have relationships with real animals. Who can resist a baby kitten? I mean, really, pure joy, right? So okay, so we talk about real versus fake, but as you're thinking of your workplace, of your relationship, supporting people who are living with dementia, what are some of the obstacles that might be to having more of these real experiences that can be so meaningful, so profound? What are some of the obstacles to that? And I have to say, this is, I think says it so succinctly. What are our own beliefs that we have internalized over time from things we have heard from the time we were children, maybe through our professional training, maybe that we continue to hear in the media? What are our deep beliefs about a person who's living with dementia? And then how do we act on that? Do we act on supporting the status quo and saying, oh, well, this is okay? And our systems, if you work in a care place, the systems, meaning obviously the policies and procedures, usually support our beliefs and behaviors of continuing with the status quo. And, the common comments that I hear, well, we've just never done that before. There's might be risk. We'll have to check with our risk department. Or really, these people have dementia. They don't know the difference. Or the other one, of course, is we don't have the staff, we don't have the time. And I don't know how much time it takes to get a relationship going with a foster agency and bring in kittens. I mean, that we're not talking about a lot of time here. I'm not talking to spend a lot of expensive money on a lot of expensive engagement programs. The things we're talking about are just real, like letting that lady make bread or dumplings rather than not letting them have a real experience. So often it comes down to our misperceptions of how we are misperceiving when we hear the word dementia. So those of you that are familiar have heard me talk before. You've probably heard me say, why not? I like to challenge people to ask, why not? What's keeping you from it? So sometimes I visit places and they will have a preschool literally across the parking lot, and they don't even really have deep relationships with that and have not built up regular intergenerational interactions, except maybe the children come over at Halloween or Easter or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where on a very regular basis there are interactions, intergenerational interactions. Why don't you have a dog that lives in your building? It adds so much, I'll just tell you. And I know there's obstacles, and that's a whole nother webinar, which I'm happy to talk about in more depth, but it's not that tough, and it adds so much. Why don't we have real dirt and real plants? We know that gardening and being outside can be so therapeutic. When I ask people about getting people outside and out on their, often they'll have nice patios or yards. And they go, oh, we do. Once a month we do a barbecue. And then on the 4th of July, we sit out, I'm going like, no, I'm not talking about special events. I'm talking about why isn't it integrated into the regular normal experiences? Why don't residents help more with tasks in your building? Those that are able to, and probably more of them than you really realize, could contribute something. They can fold their clothes, they can organize things, they can help set the table. They might enjoy vacuuming, or you might have men that are able to repair things or at least assist with it. So why don't we engage them in that way? And then I always like to look for ways that residents can communicate, can volunteer to support the greater community. So is there a food bank? Could we package food for the food bank? Can we package things that get sent over to our military? Can we, look for other opportunities? Can we go out in the park and help straighten up the park or something like that? Or how many of them could go out and help pull weeds in the garden? So I look for ways that they can volunteer to support other areas. So there's a whole dialogue going on about the culture within nursing homes and assisted livings. And many of you might be familiar with Jill Vitale Awesome from the Eden Alternative. And she's written a book called Disrupting the Status Quo of Senior Living, a Mind Shift. And she talks about how are we doing a disservice to when somebody moves into a care facility, we immediately take over everything. And it's like you're in a hotel and you're waiting for someone to come in and change your bed, and you're waiting for someone to deliver your meals. You're waiting for someone to come in and vacuum your floor. And some of you might say, that's exactly what I want. I don't want to ever have to do those things again. But really, when you think about it, for example, when we go on vacation, we savor those experiences of having those types of daily tasks done for us because it's time limited. It's not going to last forever. That's part of what makes it special. But do we really want to give up never making our own peanut butter and jelly or salami sandwich again? Do we really want to give up never pouring our own cup of coffee again, or straightening up our own bed again? So she makes the point, and I think this dialogue, you're going to hear more of it. And we know that in senior care homes, the average age of moving in is 85. People are putting off moving in as long as they can. And that makes sense also because we all love our own homes and our own environments. But on the other hand, people also talk about moving into these environments, and it means giving up. It means giving up so many things. So she's just asking us to think about better ways to create opportunities for people who move into care facilities to still be engaged in real life and not act like they have to be waited on and like they have no responsibility or nothing they could contribute themselves. So we're nearing the end here. This is an example of a beautiful hallway in a care facility. I love being outside. I love flowers, so I love these photos or these paintings. But you know what? I'd much rather live in this place that lets me go outside and get my hands dirty and smell a fresh tomato or whatever is relevant and possible where you work. So it's one thing to create a facade or a fake experience, but I challenge all of us on this to say, how can we make it more real? This is where I want to live. So that's it. I appreciate if there's any questions, and Mike, if you have more things you'd like to share, I'd love to hear that. So
let me just interject here, because we do have questions, and I want both of you to have the opportunity to make comment here. So when real experience isn't available, has there been any use and success with using virtual reality, such as the virtual reality glasses, where you're able to kind of see and virtually experience something?
Well, Susan, you want to answer that?
Well, I'd love, Mike, to talk a little bit about it and we've done embodied labs virtual reality technology where you're inside, you're virtually experiencing what a person with dementia might be experiencing. And Mike, you can speak to that. But I think that this question might be talking about the person who is experiencing virtually, say, a trip to Italy, and you put on the glasses and you've got kind of a 3D experience to experience what that trip might be. So, Mike, I'd love to hear you comment on it. Mike, as some of you may not know, is kind of a technology geek. He's helped us with our technology many times. So you want to comment about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that virtual technology, if it's available, is extremely useful and helpful. And again, it's giving people an opportunity to experience something new. One thing that would drive me crazy is, for somebody to, or even like, I'll just say, well, he's never done that before. Well, how do you know if I've never tried? I mean, since my diagnosis, I never used to paint. I never used to cook. There's a number of things that I've never done before my diagnosis, things that I'm doing now. And I like to think that even without my diagnosis, I probably would have tried those things anyways. So that should go for anybody. So just because I never tried it or experienced it before doesn't mean I wouldn't want to try and experience it again. There was a beautiful video I watched of someone, I think it might have been through Jack York at IN2L, where they put virtual reality glasses on this elderly woman, and she was watching dolphins swimming, and it actually felt like she was under the water, swimming with the dolphins. And oh, look at that baby one, and the joy from her face was just, from her voice was just incredible. You mentioned I'm a tech geek, and I kind of am. And what my dream is to have technology available, virtual technology, combined with what's called augmented reality, that would allow people to put on these headsets. And as we all know, technology gets faster and smaller as time goes along. Imagine just being able to put on a small pair of glasses and having the individual be sitting in their living room at their old house with their family, sitting around a table at Easter dinner. I mean, you miss the actual physical touch, but there's still something to be said about visually what you're seeing and what it's doing in your brain and what it's doing for you. And I believe that technology is going to happen someday. So the point to what you said is just don't discount it. Just because I never tried it before doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that they're not going to enjoy it. And try to find things that are engaging, not just things that are fun. And even like, anybody ever been to one of those IMAX movie things where you're flying in a helicopter and you're seeing things from really crazy, something like that? I mean, it's just because I've become more visual, since my diagnosis than anything else. And by that, I mean, I'm learning more visually with YouTube and things like that. Not everybody may be like that, but I totally encourage it and enthusiastically would love to see more people taking advantage of that technology.
Well, I think especially in the situation, the crisis we're facing now, boy, what a role that the technology you're describing would play. I'm going to try to get another 3 or 4 of them that we've got here. Maybe a quick comment from both of you on Paro, the robotic seal. Seems to be successful in Japan. My wife and I both found Paro very soothing. So Mike, you first, and then Anne, if you would comment on Paro, the robotic seal.
Sure, I'll try to be quick, which is a challenge for me. But where I see robotics being helpful is in lieu of smart home technology. For some folks who don't know, I'm very engaged and involved in trying to develop smart home technology to help people who have dementia living in the home stay at home living longer. And where we all now have a Google Home or an Alexa or this or that, I see a robot, if you want to call it that, taking the place of the smart home, so that you're not actually talking to this little speaker, you're actually interacting with this little robot. It may have, have a screen on it, could have a touch screen, it could, have so on and so forth, learn your habits, with artificial intelligence. I mean, there's all kinds of things that it could do to be extremely helpful. As long, again, as it's not being perceived as fake, something that's not being, oh, well, here's Mike's friend. It's not my friend. It might be my assistant. It might be it'll be my smart home. And that's just, for me, that's just the way I would react to it. So I'm all for them, absolutely, if they're used in the right context.
Right. So from the way you're describing it, would it be wrong to say that this is almost like a tool? It's something that is useful. Yeah.
Yes.
And so this robotic seal, or they have many other forms, robotic dogs, cats. I think they're usually given for the point of, like somebody mentioned, to help calm someone down or engage them. And again, my objection is if a person is getting comfort from a stuffed animal or robotic animal, I would challenge us to say, how do we first provide them with the real experience? I don't mean a real seal, obviously, but when we know that having a relationship with a real animal can be so meaningful and give and take, and the connection, why not? Why wouldn't you offer them a real animal? The development of these robotic pets is getting much more sophisticated. They are looking and sounding, making it more and more lifelike. But again, I talk about enhancing someone's image. I talk about assuming that they are able to have relationships and connections. And so why not offer that and provide them the real experience? Would the pet seal, I've seen it also, and it makes sounds that it's cued in to us, and I could see how it could be soothing. I would just challenge someone to say, well, I'm going to spend thousands of dollars to give my mother a robotic pet. She lives in a care home. Or maybe I'm going to see if I can find a really loving middle-aged dog that would just kind of curl up next to her too. I would encourage us to think along those lines, because it's real and it's normal.
So I know we're past the hour, but if Anne and Mike, you'd hang on. What I'm going to do, I'd like to get through, we've had some really great questions. And so for the recording that will go out to folks that register for the webinar, I'd like these questions and your responses to be there rather than cut us short. So here we go to the next. And for those of you on, if you have to drop off, feel free to do so and you'll get the link to all of this. What are ways to adopt concepts to COVID-19 circumstances where real can't be used and isolation adds another challenges? How things are presented can apply regardless. But AL and memory care residents are equally struggling with how to engage and maintain some sense of normalcy.
Right, right. These are such challenging times. And along those lines, I am doing a special webinar related to meaningful engagements in the time of isolation, quarantine, and fear. I will have that connection posted on my both my website and on LinkedIn if you want to register for that. And that is a real challenge. And I think more than ever, we need to offer real connections. I'm currently working with several memory care places, and we are asking the residents who live there as much as possible to stay in their own rooms. When they come out, they have to wear masks. Everyone's wearing masks now. So how do we create normalcy in these times. It's a challenge for all of us. It's a challenge for me. I feel like I'm living in the twilight zone. But more than ever, real connections are important. And so we have schedules set up to be sure that no one is in their room for more than 45 minutes without someone coming in and spending a few minutes with them. It's so important. That's probably the most important thing that I can emphasize. Also, the value of, and I know we have to keep the social distancing and all of that, so important. It's hitting this population who are so vulnerable. But having a schedule to be sure that every person is brought out of their room one-on-one and maybe is having a cup of tea out in that patio, getting some sunlight, some fresh air, a change of environment, that someone is having a conversation with them. As much as possible, we have to anchor them to normalcy. But I recognize what a challenge it is now.
One of the things we're doing is, and this just came up this week, I belong to another organization called Dementia Action Alliance, and we have a number of different discussions going on a weekly basis. And after talking to a friend of mine who lives in Arizona, who has been cooped up in his house because he can't, and he loves to play golf, I says, well, why don't we play golf together? He says, how are we going to do that? I said, do you have a Nintendo Wii? He said, sure. So we're going to start a golf league. We're going to do a Zoom session. Instead of, talking to each other, we're going to turn our cameras around at our TVs. We both happen to have the same game, and we're going to play golf together.
I love that.
So we're going to start a golf league. We're going to start a bowling league. We're going to start a miniature golf league. Whatever it is that, obviously the restriction is people need to have the same hardware. We're looking into trying to find an online platform that would allow people just to sign in on the web and be able to do it that way as well. But for a home that might have a Nintendo Wii in their common area, I know the technology is available. If people had little Apple TVs in their own rooms where you could stream things, if you're all connected to the same Wi-Fi, you should be able to even stream that so that it streams to each individual's rooms. And if they might, and again, you got to get somebody with a little technology savvy behind them, but they might be able to play golf together or bowl together, still being in their own room. The point is they're still having some social interaction with each other. My wife and I, again, we're just talking about it today. We've been having our little FaceTime chats with our grandkids because we can't see them. And they're showing us all these drawings that they like to do and coloring and this and that. And I said, you know what, why don't we have a coloring hour with our grandkids? So we're going to do a FaceTime chat, maybe Friday night after dinner or what have you, with our grandkids. And they're all going to take out their coloring books. We're going to take out some coloring books and we're going to color with them. Again, it's interaction. It's as close as you can get to without being able to hug them. So
Right.
it's hopefully creative.
Yeah, and I love the way we need to leverage technology and how wonderful it is that we've got technology to leverage. Here's one. I agree that the use of real children, pets, enhances image and dignity and is much more ideal. Do you feel the use of fake dolls and pets is unethical, even when it does in some situations lead to comfort? Hold on, there's more. For example, in a home I used to work at, a resident was often worried about her children, but when she came across a doll, she would pick it up and carry it around for long periods of time. In this case, it was self-directed and seemed to reduce her anxiety. We had rare intergenerational programs through a partnership with the preschool, which seemed to bring her a lot of joy and real connection. It would have been nice to have had this kind of interaction more often.
Yeah, so let me for sure say that I would never use the word unethical. I don't even think of it in those terms. I would never remove a doll from someone who was holding one and seemed connected or interested in having that animal or that doll. I would never take that away from someone. But I think the person who wrote the question hit the nail on the head. That wouldn't it have been nice if there'd been more real interactions with real children? And again, it goes back to challenging all of us to saying, what would it take to make that happen? How impossible is it? It's probably not impossible. It's impossible right now because we're not letting people in. But if we built our programming from the ground up with different perceptions, different goals, where are the resources that we can get children in here, that we can color every Tuesday and Thursday together with this preschool class? Where is the junior high kids that will come in and help us bake, or the high school musical quartet who will come in and rehearse with us? Where is the drama club that will come in and rehearse with us, and we can do things together? So I would never call it unethical. I would never remove a doll or an animal from someone if they seem to be comfortable with it. But I would also just challenge all of us to say, let's think outside the box, because once you get these things integrated into your culture, it's not that hard to maintain it.
I totally agree. I would never take something away from someone that was comforting to them. And when I started talking earlier, I had mentioned there's not one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my wife knows that's not something I would want, but it doesn't mean for someone else it isn't going to be soothing and helpful. But again, with what Ann just said, how was it, for me, it's always been, how was it approached? Is it being done because it's the easiest thing to do? It's the quickest thing to pacify somebody? Or have you tried real first? And my biggest fear is that, especially now that a lot of individuals are having to stay in their rooms, it's just so much easier to give them something that you don't have to think twice about, and just give it to them, and you can go on and move on to your next task because you're busy, you have a lot of things to do and everything else. And it's more, I don't want to be given something just to shut me up. And I hope I'm not being blunt. And I'm not saying, that doesn't totally answer the person's question, but if it works for them, then 100%, of course, I would never take that away from them, ever. But I would be curious to know how that person would have reacted if it was real first.
Right. And I love that, Mike, because I always say, well, okay, so put the baby doll here, and then a few feet away, put the real infant, and let the person choose. And so if you never provide them the opportunity to relate to that real child or that real animal, you are taking that choice away from them. So I just challenge us all to say, how can we make it more real? Is there a place for some of these other objects sometimes? Probably, but it'd probably be not very often if they also had more real experiences.
Okay, two more questions, and then we're going to call it. The first one is, what are the most common pushbacks, health, safety risks that you see in long-term care homes when it comes to bringing children in, and how do you respond?
Some of them are very similar to when I ask them, why don't you have a dog that lives here? It's risky, health, we don't have time, we don't have the staff, the litany comes down. Often it's, that they need to be supervised, who's going to be with them. Our risk management company is worried about kids running around. All of these are good concerns. They're valid, but pretty easily answered if you're thoughtful about how you introduce it. So, Mike mentioned coloring. That's one of the favorite activities that I like to get started with. It could be a mommy and me club. It could be a daycare or a preschool. Come on over. We're going to have cookies and milk, and we're going to color together. Or maybe today it's watercolor together. Or maybe it's today we're doing clay things together. And I tell you, once these things get integrated, the staff goes crazy when summer comes and the preschool is out and they're going like, oh no, we miss these little kids so much. So once they get integrated and people get past the obstacles, of course they need to be adequately supervised. Of course, you can't have a 3-year-old running down the hallway. Perhaps some children don't adapt well to being in a care facility. Perhaps some dogs don't adapt well to being in a care facility. But with good training, adequate supervision, they usually contribute so much and are such a big part of the life there that people can't imagine not having them there.
I think for me, the short answer is people are just afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. I mean, you might be afraid of getting shut down or ridiculed by your colleagues or coworkers or what have you, but I mean, I just think of Greenhouse and what they are today, and because it stemmed from one idea that was completely the opposite of what what times were at the time, and imagine where we'd be if it wasn't pursued. Just don't be afraid to ask.
That's the first
Thank
step.
you, Mike. Those are great comments, and we could go on and on, I'm quite sure. One last question, and I think this is a relatively easier question. Do you think that smaller living environments are more amenable to providing the real experiences? Mike, I'll let you go first, and then Ann.
Okay.
Could you repeat the question? Smaller?
Do you think that smaller living environments are more amenable to providing that real experience?
For me, 100% yes. And a quick example I'll give is I was talking to someone recently, and just to use this example of what we're dealing with right now. I've been used to, for the last few years, of being home by myself all day. And, you know, for a lot of folks that are going through this, you know, I don't want to be like, oh, welcome to my world. You know, no, that's not the point. But for a lot of people living with dementia who are at home, this is the way we've been living our lives for the last few years anyway. So it's not a huge adjustment for us. But what I want to get to answer your question is, at some point when I have to transition to moving into a care setting, what I'm dealing with right now is I love my wife more than anything in the world, but now we're living in the same space 24/7, where before I've had my own time. So imagine when I have to transition to another place, going from me used to my routine of being mostly alone during the day to moving into a place that might have 40, 30, 50, 60, 100 people. It would be chaos. It would just I don't even know how I would begin to try to adapt to that. Where if I'm moving into someplace that's more home, and home is the key word here. I'm moving home to a new home. Okay, you're going to be working in my home. Okay, where I'm living. So whatever it takes to make that transition as easily as possible. And I've been to a few greenhouse homes, and someday that's where I want to go, because of the environment, the way they're set up, and it just reminds me of home. So I hope I answered that right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. And Ann, your final thoughts.
yes, the greenhouse homes are extraordinary with the privacy. You have the kitchen, you have the great room to gather together. Those are wonderful, wonderful things. I will say, though, that I have seen wonderful culture and care being given in large places also. I think it's possible. It, it really does start with the culture of how are they going to honor the people that live there. And I know that I would, of course, want my own private room, my own private bath, but beyond that, the culture within that environment to me is the key thing. And it can be provided, I believe, in any setting. I like to say good care can be given in a barn if you have the right philosophy and care staff.
Well, thank you both. This was tremendous. I can't thank you, Anne, for sharing your expertise, and Mike to share your wisdom as well. I think you both have enriched our days. So I just want to close this out and to read the statement here by this was approved for contact hours. The program has been approved for 1 contact hour for nursing home administrators through NAB. It has also been approved for 1 contact hour for nurses through the Maryland Nurses Association. There have been no conflicts of interest identified. In order to receive the contact hour, you must be present and attend the entire program. You will also need to complete a specific contact hour evaluation for your role. Want to remind you of our next webinar, which is on April 29. Mindy Cheek will be with us, and she will be doing part 2 of the workforce culture and LGBT staff. Please check our website. You will find other webinar offerings and upcoming virtual events. Oh, one more. There is a nurse webinar May 6th at 3 p.m. as we kick off Nurses Week. And what a year, what a week it will be to really honor nurses as the incredible heroes they are for all the work that's going on now. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, thank you to our heroes out there on the front lines. God's richest blessings. And again, thank you to both Mike and Ann. We are really grateful to having had both of you. Take care and goodbye, everyone.
Be safe, everybody.
Bye-bye.